Week 4 in Python. How you all doing? Hope you're doing well. I just finished grading your week 3 Learn Together, and about half of you got the concept of using a return value. So I'm going to show that in just a minute in a little bit more simple example. And I just find it important, and I know that that's stuff that Al is not covering. That's why I'm trying to give you we're in our Learn Togethers, we're both trying to solidify, bring real those concepts, and then extend them where we can. The thing I want to say, though, before I jump into all that is that, I mentioned before there's a Python user group here in Fresno. Derek Payton from Root Access runs it, and I'm really bummed. I thought their conversation about classes was going to be next month. Turns out it was this month in August, and it just happened this week. So I'm bummed I missed that. But if you want to, it's over on Meetup. I have a link here, and you just search for Fresno Python, and you will see this. And like I said, Kobe Jones also helps him out on this one, and I'm really, really bummed. Shout out to Root Access, and shout out to Derek for what he does. Derek works for Bitwise, and he is the lead developer for Order Slip, their startup inside of Bitwise, and he's just awesome. He's a all-around community guy, and I was actually thinking of trying to get him to office hour, but I think what I'm going to do is suggest that we all try to make his September meetup, and then I'll reach out to him and ask him what his topic's going to be for September. But really any month. And I think it's the 4th. That was the other thing. I think I saw it was the 4th, right? They meet on the 4th Tuesday. And right now, of course, it's through Zoom. And that's what they're using. It's an online. So for now, hopefully one day we go back to regular meetups. So anyway, like I said, the other thing I want to say before I jump in to looking at a little bit of a simple code example for what I was asking for this week in your arguments and parameters. On the output that I'm requiring you to just provide and I'm doing it to make sure your code's running, right? Kind of a step of, making sure, because really you should be running your code. It should be working code. That's what you're submitting. And if it's not working, then you need to reach out for help. And I'm noticing that the Discord is really active, and I appreciate everyone who's helping out. Remember, when you're there to get help, not to get code. Not that I see anybody really doing that, because if somebody gives you something, it really won't help you learn. And I think you all know my philosophy about this is that's why. And this week I saw a couple of people used code from somewhere else, and they noted it, and that's what you need to do. The idea is that over time you try not to do that, because you can do it on your own. But I know for that first week, like, I threw a little bit of a challenge, but I said, all right, if you can't do the prime numbers, then go find some code that can. But anyway, so the bottom line about that one is that make sure that when you're copying and pasting the output of your code, don't do it in a print screen. It just, honestly, I try not to do print screens to attach, even on GitHub, and embed them, because it's so easy just to do cut and paste, just because images slow canvas down no matter where they come from. So just try not to do that. Okay, so I am working on, before I jump into code and look for a minute, I think I have already, this is week 4. Week 4 is already out there and ready. I do need to do a video. I haven't done a video for the walkthrough of my code, and I actually think I want to change my code because, and this is what the other thing I want to say to you, like, getting a practice of coding, if possible, every day is really beneficial, because if you take a break, and I know I've talked to enough people where this is a fairly common experience, is if you're breaking, like if you code only on the days like the assignments are due, you're not really leaning into building up your both muscle memory and your that There's probably a couple of groups of cells in your brain that helps you actually problem solve, write code to um, achieve a specific objective. And next week in week 4, I talk about the dev that's hitting us in week 6. So, lean into, schedule yourself accordingly if you can. Again, I don't know your schedules. I know mine, and I know that if I code every day, I feel better. I feel better because I feel like I don't have to do that little ramp up, right? So attempt to do that whenever possible. Okay. And then I think it was Ephron asked me, good question about it at the end of the semester. Yeah, all the code for this class from the GitHub organization does go away, but you have it locally. At the end of the semester, if you want to remind me, you can. I can convert them to place them into your own GitHub area. So we can chat about that. But in general, yeah, I just get rid of that stuff. Okay. Okay. So here's what I want. As part of the first reply, and you could have replied to any of that, of course, I want you to pause right here, hit pause, and tell me, do you know what the output of both line 8 and line 10 will be? Okay, so again, this is the idea of, because okay, hopefully you've come back, or the question is, did you do what I asked, right? Did you pause? And did you see if you could determine without writing the code, just by reading it, what this code was going to do? Now, if you didn't take that step, right, you're not leaning into this thing that I'm trying to talk about. So lean into it, right? Because that's the way you learn, in my experience. All right, so what do I have here? I have two functions, right? The add 2 and multiply 2. Oh, that's not right. I got to spell that correctly, but you get the idea. It's funny, right? So again, you write something, you look at it later, and you realize, oh, I could have done that better. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting a default value in my first function, right? I'm saying return whatever is passed in to you. And again, these are parameters, right? If nothing is passed in, we set that parameter to val of, in this local scope, we set it to 0. Otherwise, we look at what's passed in. And then we just return by taking that value and adding 2 to it. And then the return statement then stores that result here in the global scope. Okay, so then the next function, multiply 2, multiply. In this case, I don't need the return value, but I still have it. And the question would be, should I print it? We could talk about that, because if I'm not using it, should I even return it, right? The answer is really no, but let's walk through the code and then we'll kind of play with it, right? And then I just said print the return or the output of calling with no arguments. Remember, arguments, parameters, right? So do you know, what was your guess on the output, right? Yeah, 14. So how is this true? So we pass 5 as an argument into this first function. And because we are passing a default value, we are defining that val as 5 equal 5 here. And then we add 2 to it. So that'd be 7. And the return gets placed into, declared into result. Okay, so it returns it and then it assigns that into result. And then on the second one, right, I'm just calling multiply 2, passing in whatever the result was. So instead of coding a value, I'm referencing the return value from my first call and passing it in to the multiply 2. Again, if I don't pass anything in, right, that value would be 0. And then I say return val times 2. So because 7 times 2 is 14, that's going to print. And then I just called it with the add to without anything as far as arguments, and it picks up the default value. So you're going to see this. What I want is this kind of piece of functionality to show up in your dev one, sorry, your dev 0, which is in week 6. But let's talk about this for a minute. When I had you pause, did this give you a moment of why are you doing this? If not, it probably should have, right? Because really, if I'm not going to, right? If I'm not going to use the return value, why am I returning it? Okay. Now, Al talks about if you return nothing, right? None is returned as a primitive value, as a primitive value within Python. But I'm talking more from like why return a value if you're not going to use it. So I'm curious if you caught that when you were looking at this code. But having seen this now, does it make sense? Now, of course, now in order for me to get that same functionality, right, I'd have to print. Right? Okay. So that's a very simple example of what I was asking you to do. And again, about half of you got this, and you did set up 2 functions, but about half of you didn't either return a value or didn't use a return value. And I think I saw at least a couple examples, where you returned a value, but then you didn't use it. Okay. So the thing you can answer in your reply is, did that help clear that up? The other thing was, yesterday I had some time, so I think I'm finally adjusting to this semester schedule. So I actually went through and did a quick review of people who had submitted by yesterday at around noon. So that's the other benefit of submitting a little early is I'm going to get better at replying when I see code submitted. So make sure you check. Benefit from those comments so you can fix any of those issues that are there. And if you feel like my comments about your code were like, no, maybe I missed something. Trust me, I try to take my time and read through it, but God knows I could miss something. Then, like a lawyer, defend what you feel like that was worth. Totally fine. I'm really okay with that. I just want you to know. And sometimes I know students don't want to do that with instructors for whatever reason. Maybe they've had bad experiences doing that. I'm really okay with it. So I just want you to know. All right. So to summarize, Python user group, make sure when you're pacing your code to show that your code actually ran. Do that just in text. Don't do it in print screens. You can reply to and do actually the thing I'd probably want to hear the most is, did you get that right before when I had you? Did you pause? Did you get it right? Right. And did you think about why I was printing rather than to use that return value? Okay, so week 4 is fun. There's not a huge lecture. I do add something that very typical, so that we add a new video to extend the idea of try and accept and else and finally. And I agree with the comment that Kelly made in one of these, and I think it was a code for next week they already posted. It's like it takes a little while to wrap your head around that. So practice. All right, the air's getting cleaner in Fresno. Shout out, huge gratitude to our amazing fire folks. Really heroic effort. Huge amount of land lost, but could have been much worth without the heroic effort of those folks. And to all of our healthcare workers and anybody working on the front lines, thank them. If you're one of them, thank you. So we're at week 4. Oh, by the way, this is also the last week to drop. I'm not recommending it, but just to know that is upon us. All right. Have a good one. I will. My goal now is to actually do the video for my code for week 4, and actually to, I think I'm pretty much sure what we're going to do for week 5. We're going to do some list calisthenics, and I got to work on that. So